Hi guys, it's me, Mr. Wilson, and we're going to be reading Chapter 5 today of Guardians of the Taiga. Once again, special thanks to StacyPlays and Harper Publishing for letting me read this to my friends. Let's go. Everest, Basil, Noah, and Addison were out of the cave before Stacy had even wiped the drool from her face. They stopped for a brief moment outside to listen for the howl again, and then disappear from Stacy's sight. Stacy turned to Wink, who was blinking his eyes in bewilderment, having been in a deep sleep. "Tucker's in trouble," Stacy said, quickly reaching for her boots. Wink snapped to attention and lowered himself next to Stacy. "No, go without me," Stacy said, tugging on her boots. "I'll be right behind you." There was no time for Stacy to even tie her laces. She grabbed her satchel and ran out of the cave after Wink and into the night. The howl had to come from somewhere along the ridge. Wink set off up the hill after the rest of the pack, with Stacy close on their heels. A thin switchback path led from the cave to the top of the ridge, but Stacy and the wolves had left it rough and hard to spot intentionally, always guarding against human discovery. Even with the full moon, Stacy couldn't see nearly as well as the wolves, and was struggling to make it up the steep incline, her loose bootlaces flapping against her ankles. Another howl pierced the air, and Stacy stumbled over a branch. Wink stopped and ran back to her, his eyes asking if she was all right. "I'm fine, but I'm slowing you down," she said, tying her laces with fumbling fingers. "Go find the others. I'll catch up." Wink lowered himself next to Stacy, as if to say, "I'm not going anywhere without you." And Stacy climbed on his back. When the trail got too steep, it was almost a sheer climb. She could feel that Wink, despite his athleticism, was beginning to struggle. "I can scale the rock," Stacy said in his ear. "It'll be faster." Wink crouched low to the ground, and Stacy hopped off, bootlaces now tied. While Wink scrambled up the rest of the way, Stacy searched for hand and footholds on the rock. It was going slow, but eventually she found her footing and pulled herself up to a small ledge. The ground was a little less steep after that, and with relief she climbed onto Wink's back again. There was no time to lose. Tucker's forlorn howl, closer now, confirmed that. Finally, after what felt like forever, but was probably closer to 10 minutes, Stacy and Wink reached the top of the ridge. Stacy jumped off Wink and crouched down. She could see paw prints of Everest, Basil, Noah, and Addison headed east. Stacy and Wink started running again, but only made it about 20 yards before both were tackled to the ground by Basil. "Basil, why'd you—" Stacy began to shout until Basil pressed her nose into Stacy's mouth, instantly quieting her. Everest ran up with a worried expression. Stacy and Wink exchanged a nervous glance, and then followed Basil and Everest silently to where Addison and Noah were standing. Stacy peered in the direction the other wolves were looking, through the thick trees and into the small clearing, and gasped in horror. There was Tucker, standing in the middle of the moonlit clearing, surrounded by a pack of snarling wolves. Stacy couldn't believe her eyes. The wild pack had more than doubled in number since the last time she had seen them. 8, 9, 10. Stacy was counting the number of wolves in the pack. She had no idea they'd grown to such size. Everest motioned to some figures in the trees on the other side of the clearing. Stacy strained to see and to make out the shadows. 11, 12. Wait, there are 2 pups too. Stacy queried urgently. Everest nodded solemnly. 14, Stacy exclaimed quietly. "No wonder they're running out of food." Suddenly, Stacy noticed a small animal standing between Tucker's legs. It was diminutive, snarling red fox. Tucker must have jumped into the middle of the pack to defend the creature. But why, Stacy wondered. She hated the idea of a fox ending up for dinner for the wolf pack, but Tucker rarely showed any form of aggression. The wolves are that desperate they would eat a fox, a fellow member of the canine family. Stacy took a closer look. So there's Tucker protecting the wolf. "Whoa, that's a dog," Stacy whispered. It did look remarkably like a fox, but it was definitely a dog. A dog with gorgeous fluffy tail and pointy ears. Up until now, Stacy had never seen a dog in real life. She'd only seen pictures in books, but she'd always dreamed of someday having one as a pet. How did a little dog manage to survive in the forest by itself? And in that moment, she knew that, like Tucker, she would do whatever she had to, including face down a pack of hungry wolves to keep the little dog alive. Everest emerged from the bushes with Stacy's other wolves following behind him. The two wolf packs squared off on opposite sides of the clearing. Everest was almost nose to nose with the other pack's alpha. Stacy was surprised. The pack had a new leader, a female with a big bite taken out of her left ear, probably a battle wound from when she challenged the former alpha for a lead position in the pack. She had obviously been successful. Stacy felt bad for the other wolf, who was likely now the pack's new beta. Stacy remained in the bushes, studying the other wolves in the clearing. Almost all of them had black, gray, and brown fur, common for the type of wolves they were, except the alpha, who Stacy nicknamed Dusky, in her head. She was beautiful. She was slender with long, lanky legs. Her fur was mostly gray, but also with patches of red and a cream underbelly. Each one of them looked underweight, particularly Dusky. Low growls rumbled in their throats while they waited to see what would happen. A signal from their alpha could lead to an all-out war. The wild wolves outnumbered Stacy's pack, but Everest and the others were stronger, smarter, and better fed. Somehow Everest was able to communicate that. The wild wolves knew they would lose any fight over the dog. With an almost imperceptible sign from Dusky, they backed down one by one, disappeared into the trees. As Dusky went to leave, she turned toward the bushes where Stacy was crouched and let out a low, nervous "Ooh." Everest snarled a reply, and with that, Dusky slunk back into the shadows. The dog had frozen in place for a moment as if it was stunned by a last-minute salvation at the hands, or paws rather, of wolves no less. Stacy strained her eyes to see if it was hurt. She knew basic first aid for animals from watching Tucker over the years. He was a remarkable healer, and together they had brought injured animals to the cave for medical attention and rehabilitation. Suddenly, the dog took off. "Let's go," Stacy said to the others. "It could be hurt, or it could end up back in the middle of the wild wolf pack. Plus, I want a dog." The dog was fast, but so were they. They were dashing after it, trying to be silent as possible to avoid scaring it off. But 6 wolves and 1 girl dashing through the forest in the dark can't help but make a lot of noise. There were down trees to leap over, rocks to scale, hills to slide down. At one point, Stacy climbed on Basil's back. She could hear the wind whistling in her ears as they scrambled down the steep ravine that separated their taiga from the old oak forest. The dog knew the terrain. They lost it more than once and had to wait before Everest picked up the scent again. But he did pick it up. Dawn was just beginning to break when Stacy spotted the tip of the fluffy red tail disappearing into a cave. "There!" she shouted. "It ran into the cave." Everest tried to stop her from following the dog. This was a cave they'd never explored, which always meant possible danger, and there was unstable mine tunnels riddled throughout the area. The other wolves seemed to be in agreement, all except Wink, who loved a good adventure. "I'm going in," Stacy said forcefully. Wink was on her heels. Reluctantly, the other wolves followed. Stacy had learned to be ready for anything. From her satchel, she pulled out the materials to make a torch, a sturdy stick and a piece of an old t-shirt that she previously soaked with kerosene when a camper wasn't looking. She quickly wound the cloth around the stick and then used her knife to spark a piece of flint off the cave's wall. Seconds later, the torch was blazing. The cave was dark and steep, with none of their comforts Stacy and the wolves had brought into their own cave to make it homey. This cave was much longer than their own, with sharp descent deep into the earth. Just when Stacy thought it would never end, the cave opened into an abandoned mine shaft. Stacy has always avoided the mine, which had a few entrances from the ravine. She didn't trust it not to collapse on top of her, but the dog might be injured, and she was willing to risk her own safety to make sure the dog made it out alive. She sensed Everest holding back, wanting to give up the rescue. "We have to try to help," Stacy thought. And she pushed on, knowing the wolves wouldn't let her do it alone. The torch revealed a minecart on an old rickety railroad. She hopped in and pumped the handle to get started, but soon the weight of the cart itself powered her further and further down into the mine, while the wolves ran on either side of her. They were moving deeper underground than Stacy had ever been before. The air was getting hotter and hotter. She knew Everest and the others were thinking they should give up and turn around. The dog clearly did not want to be rescued. "That dog doesn't know we want to help it," Stacy yelled. Her words echoed off the smooth stone walls. It'll die down here if we don't get to it." Water dripped from the walls. They kept running into swarms of bats. Stacy felt like her face had been cocooned by broken cobwebs. They pressed on. They kept going until they reached the end of the minecart's track. The mine had become a rugged cave again. Stalagmites jutted off the floor, while stalactites hung from the ceilings. They wove in and out of them, and what came to only be described as a cave within a cave. A hole going down, down, down. The descent was too steep for them to navigate without help. After a quick consultation with Addison, Stacy reached for a long, thick rope in Tucker's pack. Rope they had woven themselves from sturdy vines. She threaded it around the minecart's wheels and used the bowline knot to attach it to the minecart's lever. Then she wrapped the other end around Everest. The cart would serve as sort of a pulley so they could lower themselves through the deep hole. They'd be able to use it to get them back up again, too. Everest went first. I hope the rope is long enough, or I don't know what we'll do. Finally, Everest signaled to Stacy with a tug on the rope that he had reached the bottom. He slipped out of his pack, and they raised it up again. Stacy was the next to go down, followed by Addison, Wink, and Noah. Basil and Tucker would stay with the minecart in case anything went wrong and they needed additional help. As soon as everyone reached the bottom, Stacy gave 2 quick tugs on the vines to make sure that Basil and Tucker were aware they had made it down safely. Then they all untied themselves and set off after the dog again. The cave became hotter and hotter the deeper they went. Stacy raised her torch to reveal steamy pools of water and magma, the molten rock found beneath the earth's crust around them. "Be careful," Stacy said. "We're deep, deep in the earth. If you miss a step, you'll..." The word "die" got stuck in Stacy's throat when she spotted the dog. It was standing in the center of a very small rock, surrounded by magma. One wrong move, and it would be burned to death. End of chapter 5. So, tomorrow we will figure out if they rescue the dog or if they don't rescue the dog. Ooh, I'm so nervous. But we will figure it out. Okay, I hope you guys are enjoying this book. I know I am enjoying reading it to you, even though I might seem like a hot mess. I'm loving it, and I hope you guys are too. I will see you guys for the next chapter. Love you guys. Bye!